3 weeks ago, we played our best tournament as a duo, but choked at the end and missed qual. The next tournament, we played well, but missed qual again. We were playing so well, surely we qual in the next tournament. Or the next one. Or the one after that. How did we go from barely missing qual to some of our worst tournaments played? I reviewed and broke down what happened for us to do so well in those two tournaments and why we fell into this bad tournament streak and how we could get out of it and finally qual. Starting with our good tournaments, we played 9 games, made it to endgame 6 times, and played 2 average endgames and had 4 good endgames. In our second good tournament, we played 8 games and made it to 7 endgames, but had 3 bad endgames, 2 average endgames, and only 2 good endgames. Some of the mistakes we made were very minor but ended up costing a ton of points. For example, in this 10th place game, I thought that there was a solo in this wood and I rushed and edited myself down instead of spraying from my box, and it turned out to be a duo. We ended up killing them, but there was another duo to our right who cleaned up the fight. I didn't purposely edit down to commit to the fight, but regardless, it got us killed in 10th place and missed out on 33 placement points and any kill points we may have gotten. Moving on to our bad tournaments, in our first, we only made 5 endgames. 2 bad, 1 average, and 2 good. We died Offspawn 3 times and died in 2 mid-game fights. The next tournament, we made 5 endgames again, but had 2 really bad endgames, 1 average, and 2 good. We died Offspawn 3 times and died in 2 mid-game fights. And in the last tournament, we made 4 endgames, and not only did we just make 4 endgames, but 2 of those endgames were really bad, with the other 2 being good. We had 2 Offspawn deaths, 1 mid-game death, 2 mid-game rotate deaths, and I didn't load in 1 game. Obviously, you can see some pretty big problems here, and the problems I'm going to address are the mid-game fights and rotates, the bad and really bad endgames, and Offspawn. I'll work backwards and start with endgames first. The really bad endgames are all really dumb mistakes with easy fixes, but cost us a lot of time and points, so we have to make sure we don't make these mistakes again if we want to qual. 2 out of 4 of our really bad endgames were due to bad awareness, specifically when looking for a refresh. We would go to smack at a team's walls or spray them down, and another team would take that opportunity to catch us off guard and kill us. Unfortunately, you can't really depend on audio that much endgame, so you can't be spending extended periods of time trying to look for a refresh without checking to make sure that you're safe. The next mistake is getting together after a launch pad. Ideally, you would be right on your teammate as they land, but sometimes you might get split up, which is fine. However, you can't rush to get back together. If you get split off a pad, land and make sure that you're safe, and then find where your teammate is and communicate who's going to get to who. If you don't take the time to play your life, you'll end up dying like I did a couple of times. The last big mistake is being behind on low ground. This was only responsible for one of our really bad endgames, but it stopped top 9s from becoming almost guaranteed top 2s. Being behind on low ground makes you prone to getting cut off and dying, which happened twice and led to our death another time. The best solution to this is going up and out, because a higher layer equals less congestion and more space to work with. The bad and decent endgames are due to more minor mistakes like missing mats on a refresh and getting dropped down, and playing dead side for too long with no refresh attempts. Refresh attempts are one thing we'll be focusing on a lot. You see some of the best duels like Acorn and Edgy or Malibuka and Mustache go for a ton of refresh attempts even if their mats are pretty good. Whenever they see an opportunity, they go for it. And if they don't get it, it's fine because they still got the mats to go for another refresh. One thing that I notice I do a lot is look too far from Leaf and he isn't able to help since he's staying ahead of zone, or we'll get a refresh and have a lot of mats and Leaf wants me to stick on him and not open anything to make sure that we don't die. Even though we have good mats doesn't mean we shouldn't look, because there might be a good opportunity we pass up on to play it safe, but when it comes time to find a refresh, since we're low on mats, we might not be able to find anything and that could cost us. Moving on to our mid games. Mid game fights are pretty straightforward when it comes to finding mistakes, and it either comes down to taking ones and losing them, which isn't the best way to fight in duels, or me being a dumbass and pressuring in a way that allows me to take lots of damage. I've now fixed that mistake, but it cost a fair amount of fights in the past. It's very rare that we die on the mid game rotate, but it happened to us twice due to small mistakes. First was not blocking in front of us, which allowed the team to crack us, which led to us getting lobby focused, and the second time was when we were one of the last teams in the 4th since we based on edge 3rd and got sprayed by one team below Surge, which then led to the entire lobby spraying at us. Only reason we had to base edge 3rd was to get our medals, since the team disengaged Sunny and took the building we get our medal from. Which leads us to our last issue, which is Offspawn. We have 8 Offspawn deaths in our last 3 tournaments, whereas our 2 good tournaments we only had 1. 4 of these deaths were due to us getting out-dropped or conned by 2 or 3 teams. Only reason for us getting out-dropped was picking the wrong mark of our drop map and jumping out of the bus too late and being further behind. We watched back to see which drops they chose to out-drop us and took note of that for future tournaments. The other 4 deaths were due to impatience when having the advantage, or not making a play and dragging out the fight long enough for a third party to pull up. I won't get too specific into Offspawn issues since there's less you can learn from this, but it's worth mentioning why we're in a bad streak. If we fix all these mistakes, there will be very little stopping us from qualling. If you enjoyed or found this video helpful, be sure to like and subscribe, and if you want to support me further, use code HOWL in the item shop. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys later.